So let's start by talking about the camera layout. Now, for those of you with a keen eye, you'll notice that from the front, this camera looks exactly the same as a Canon 5D Mark II. The only difference really is that they've got the Canon 5D Mark III badge as opposed to the 5D Mark II. And then up at the top here, you've got the microphone is still in exactly the same place. So from the front, nothing looks any different. It's only when you turn the camera to the rear that things start to get a bit more interesting. Let's start with the on-off switch. The on-off switch on this camera has moved to the same side as it is actually on the Canon 7D. So to switch the camera on, you flick that across and it's a nice solid snap, so you know you can't accidentally knock it on or off. The next big change on this camera is the mode dial. Now, on the Canon 60D, they introduced this back in 2011, and this is a lockable mode dial switch. So what happens is on the Canon 5D Mark II, you could easily knock the mode dial. Well, of course, with this one, you can't. You've got to press the button in and move the dial. So that's a really nice addition on this camera. The next thing you're going to notice is the LCD screen on the rear of the camera. It's increased in size. Now, it's much brighter, it's much sharper, and that's only a good thing when it comes to focusing. To engage movie mode, you have to switch between camera stills mode and camera movie mode. And this is another harp back to the Canon 7D. So you flick the switch from camera stills to the red camera movie, and this is also where you can stop your movie record function. The other big difference in this camera, or rather similarity to the 5D Mark II, is the batteries. It uses the LPE6 battery. So thank you, Canon. Finally, a camera manufacturer who brings a new camera out and doesn't entirely change the battery system, so you have to go out and spend a fortune on new batteries. So the batteries you used on your Canon 5D Mark II will work absolutely fine on the 5D Mark III. The camera has two media slots. It's a slot for compact flash, and the camera will also take SD cards and all variations thereof. Now, it's worth noting here, the spring in the SD card slot is very, very bouncy. And if you're not careful, your card can just fly straight out. So you need to be mindful of that. Now, it's worth noting also here that whilst there are two card slots, when you're filming in video mode, you can record to one or the other, and you can start recording on one and it will continue recording onto the other. But unlike stills mode, where you can record onto both cards simultaneously, you can't do this in video mode. And on the other side of the camera are all your inputs and your outputs. Now, this will look fairly familiar if you are a 5D Mark II user. On this side, we have our microphone input. The difference between this and the 5D Mark II is that this is now a stereo microphone input. You've got your flash sync connector and your remote controller. It's on the other side where things start to change, because after finally listening to us users, Canon have put a headphone jack in here. So now you can monitor the audio recording on the camera. This is a huge plus for video recording. You've got your USB connection and HDMI. Now, a big plus, and we'll start with the good news, the big plus is that when you stream HD out of the HDMI cable, when you play that to a monitor, you get HD as you'd expect. But on the 5D Mark II, when you went into record mode, that signal would drop down to standard definition, which was pretty frustrating, really. Well, that's no longer the case. When you engage record now, the signal to your monitor remains in HD, so what you see is what you get. The bad news, unfortunately, is that you still can't stream a clean HDMI signal out to your monitor with no data displayed. This is a real frustration, and I'm sure it's a simple software fix to just switch that off. But sadly, if you record out of this port, you're going to see everything that's recorded on the screen. I don't really understand why this is the way it is, but it is. So we can't record clean out. You can do it on the Nikon, so it is possible. Anyway, just to finish up, in terms of camera layout, We've got a data display on the right hand side with your white balance, your AF and drive modes, your ISO mode, the light switch, and some other controls which we'll go into much more detail in the next chapter. So let's move on and talk about what all these camera controls do and how do you engage them to shoot great video.